So this week, talking about the fallout from M&S, co-op, cybersecurity.
Good old chestnut.
There's no tech answer to that.
I'm sure I cribbed it off someone. I doubt I came up with it.
Minutes after it's finished, it could be used.
And the other thing that they always look for.
Anyway, so
Wow. Hot, isn't it?
It is hot. So this week, talking about the fallout from M&S, co-op,
cybersecurity. Good old chestnut.
M&S, co-op, big companies, but how does it affect our clients, medium-sized businesses?
I saw it in the news, and I'm ashamed to say I didn't really bother reading about, because it's one thing after another now with cybersecurity, isn't it? But so I didn't really bother reading. What was it?
Well,
what happened?
The interesting thing is M&S have not really said what was the cause, which is intriguing in itself.
What was the impact?
Oh, massive. They couldn't take online orders. I think their iPOS terminals were down, but they weren't taking and shipping online orders.
Oh, wow. This day and age, that's huge.
It is. And last time I looked, I think they were still suffering from that.
But did the co-op get hit as well?
The co-op were hit, and there's even less notice on that, which is even more intriguing, isn't it? But also the National Security Council, NSC, or whatever they are, the government body, have advised all retail outlets to look at their cybersecurity and beef it up. And they were both hit with ransomware. So ransomware being where they break into your system maybe months before and encrypt your data so that you can't access it. So it hasn't gone, it's still there. It's just you don't have access to it because they've encrypted it. And you're meant to it's ransomware because you're meant to pay a fee to criminals for them to give you the key to unlock it. But you've got to bear in mind you're dealing with criminals. So will they give you the right key, and can you trust them, and all that sort of thing. So but it was all ransomware, which is
scary, isn't it? These big businesses as well might have the war chest to be able to deal with it, to deal with the business disruption. But you would thought the smaller the organization, the less chance they have of dealing with being able to survive the ransomware attack, let alone, pay the ransom stuff, the interruption to business.
Well, absolutely. It's not just that as well. It's the disruption, but so many of these things they're avoidable almost if you have the right policies, procedures in place, backups. It's all, in my mind, it's all, I've worked for a company where we were hit with a ransomware attack, but I'd luckily just implemented a new infrastructure, and we were backing up every 15 minutes. So we just lost 15 minutes of information, which the company could deal with. But that's the key. So, most of our clients can just look at how often are we backing up. Crucially, when was the last time you restored from a backup? It's all right having a backup, but if you can't use it, and then what is that length of period? A lot of companies will do it daily. What's the impact on the business if you do lose a whole day's trading? Would it be better? It's always better if you can get away with a shorter time period, but the companies can look at it without our help.
Again, backups is one of those we've discussed before, that the boring hygiene bits of technology, but it's one of those things that can have huge implications. The one time you need it is invariably the time that you didn't bother testing it, and all hell breaks loose.
Yeah, I think most companies will be doing backups no matter how big they are. The crucial thing is, how often do you test the restore of them?
That's getting it back up and running. How long does it take? What do you lose when you do it? What's the impact on the business while you're doing it?
Indeed. And indeed, so Marks Spencer's were down for a couple of weeks, I think, because it took them that long to restore their systems, whatever. It might be quite quick. There's different levels of backup, isn't there? But the ultimate should be business continuity. So your building's burnt down. You don't have access to your building for some reason. COVID taught us this.
Yeah.
can you still restore everything even though you don't have access to your building? That would be the true test to do every so often.
And with cybersecurity, there are companies that you and I both dealt with that they specialize in when you are hit with a ransomware attack. I think you can get insurance policies where these guys kick in, or you can go independently to them and they'll help you get out of it. I mean, not that you want to be in that situation, but if you do get in a pickle, there are organizations out there that specialize in getting you out of that.
Yeah, I think a lot of them are backed by insurance companies. So a lot of businesses, well, every business will have business insurance. A lot of it will include cyber insurance.
It's a specific. I thought it was a specific thing.
It can be, but they're building it a lot of because all modern businesses are reliant so much on tech that it's been built into business insurance as well now. And they have, if you have insurance, they have people that deal specifically with, just handle everything, the negotiation and everything. But you just don't want to be in that position, and it's so easily avoidable.
And to get the insurance, I'm sure I remember you have to have certain things in place. Otherwise, they won't even insure you for cybersecurity. So you've got to have some of the basics in place.
Yeah, well, it's like any type of insurance, car insurance. The car insurers will try and weasel out of any insurance claim if you've not got an MOT or you've not got this, that, and the other. And cyber insurance is the same. If you haven't got certain, you might say you've got them, but if it's found that you haven't got them, then they won't pay out.
I think the point is there are specific things that are known that you can do, that if you do them, there's two benefits. One is you're actually less likely to incur a cyber incident, a ransomware incident, or other sort of cybersecurity incident. And two is you can bet your bottom dollar if the insurance companies are saying if you've got these 10, 15, 28 things in place, then we'll insure you. Then actually the risk of them having to actually get involved and pay out or invest in recovery from their side, the actuaries will have done their homework and say, well, actually, if you do all these things, the chances of it happening are so minute that we can just take your premium every month.
Yes, and well, the premiums get lower, aren't they? The higher your protection, the lower your premiums are.
So there are lots of things that can be done to
very effective. So there's something called Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. As far as I understand it, the differences between the two is Cyber Essentials is self-certification. Yeah, we do all that, tick, 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 tick. Yeah. But then Cyber Essentials Plus is you have someone independently auditing that you've done all those things. So,
and that's sort of entry level. Right? That's pretty much the basic.
It is.
There's lots of things you can do above that, which is based on risk assessments of.
Yeah, so Cyber Essentials Plus is fairly basic, as we know, isn't it?
Yeah.
But still, it provides it's a government-backed scheme to ensure medium-sized businesses have a minimum. Then you go on to things like ISO 27001 that some government organisations are insisting. That's another level of security, processes, procedures. Not a lot of it is actual infrastructure. A lot of it is just policies, procedures, training. Training's important because something like 84% of hacks come from internal staff, disgruntled, just clicking on the wrong link, just doing something, or someone pretending to be someone internal. So train staff. And security, so I've just been somewhere where I was a visitor and I was made to wear a lanyard and to show that I was a visitor. And it's always puzzled me that surely you get your staff to wear the lanyards, because if I was a criminal, I'd just come in and think, right, get around the door, take it off. I look like a member of staff because I no longer have a visitor badge on. That's always...
places I've worked is both. So staff have them and visitors have them. So if you're not wearing one, you get challenged, and anyone can challenge. And they're not in particularly high security businesses, by the way. That just seems to be sort of
different colours depending on what you are.
Yeah, but everyone was kind of wearing them.
But yes, as a minimum, you should have staff wearing the badges, because then if anyone that's not wearing one, it'd be more obvious, wouldn't it? It must be visitor.
Yeah. So there's what would you call it? Social engineering is is your 84%, isn't it? A lot of it.
Yeah, the figures vary, but it's around the 84%.
A lot, we can say a lot, is down to social engineering. And that can be like encouraging people to click on a link and pretending to be someone you're not on an email.
Oh, yeah, no, a common one is, they're quite sophisticated now, but a common one is the CEO sending an email to the CFO saying, "Oh, pay £1 million into this account. I've just agreed this deal," or something, and it looks all genuine, whatever, and it's not. But be surprised how many CFOs or senior people get.
I've actually had that in a company I worked in, exactly that scenario. And the irony was, it's the same for a lot of CEOs, and certainly in larger businesses, they're usually people of few words. So it's quite an easy thing to mimic. It's like, I've just had an irate phone call from so-and-so at such and such a company. We owe them 280K. Pay it now. Don't bother phoning me.
Yeah.
That could be, it's quite close. And ironically, it was very close to the way that the CEO I worked with used to send emails out. And luckily the CFO phoned me up and said, "Does this look?" I said, "Yes."
Yeah.
Highly suspicious. Just look at the link. And they're not very sophisticated. The email where it came from was obviously not the CEO's, but people don't always look at that.
But things like that are not really, there's no tech answer to that. It's policies and procedures.
And like you said, training, making people aware that these things do happen, and you're well within your rights to always check that, are you sure that supplier's not on our preferred supplier list? Are you sure you want me to pay it? There's nothing wrong with that. You might incur a little bit of wrath from an irate CEO if it's a genuine request, but you'd also think CFOs or finance people will probably know the supplier and probably know that amount is outstanding. Certainly in a medium-sized business, perhaps less so in a larger business.
Yeah. But there's just standards. Just have the right, have a system in place that says all requests for money don't go via email, they go through our system, whatever our system is.
They generally don't, do they? There's normally some sort of process that they're supposed to go through, rather than an irate email from the CEO to the CFO saying, "Page in now, we showed loads of cash."
Indeed. So there's that. So I talked earlier about car insurance, and some people also talk about penetration testing. So people say, "Oh, you need a penetration test." But I always look at penetration tests like an MOT. It tests your IT in that point in time, but then the following day, minutes after it's finished, it could be useless, just like an MOT. Your car's fine when it passed, but you can drive out and a headlight goes or something, and therefore it would have failed. So penetration tests are all very well, but if you're going to do them, you need to be doing quite frequently.
But it's still part of the armory, isn't it? It's still a regular thing. Even if regular is once or twice a year, it's still a regular thing to do.
Yeah, I would have thought the best time to do a penetration test, though, is probably when you just made a change, implemented a new system or something like that. And there are systems out there now, if you go with some cybersecurity companies, that will be constantly doing a penetration.
Yes. Quite often part of the package, isn't it? That there's a persistent knocking on the door to see if you done anything.
So that's another thing that I come across with our clients is they often say, "Oh, we've got a company that does all that for us." And I think they miss the point that legally they're obligated. Yes, it's all right having another company, but the responsibility stops with them. So I said, "That's great. Just show me your monthly or quarterly, cyber security report." So we don't get one of those. So many say that we don't get one of those. I said, "Well, so how do you know that you're, successfully being defended?" And then on the rare occasion that they do have one, it's all green, no attacks, nothing. And you go,
unlikely to be the case.
Very, very much doubt that that's the case. You might have had attacks that have been successfully defended, because we talked about this before. I think that cyber criminals are just like people walking down a street trying door handles. And that's how they all work. They've got automated scripts that just search the internet looking for a weak door or something to get into. So as a company, no matter how big you are, you will have been attacked, but hopefully your protection is in place to defend against it. But your cyber reporting should be showing that we've been attacked 3 times this month and successfully defended because this, that, and the other. If you've had no attacks, then you've also got a question: do we really believe it?
And when before we started recording this and we were talking about this, we were talking about the impact of supply chain on larger companies and how relevant it is now. We're talking about M&S and Co-op, relatively large retail companies here in the UK. But it's not necessarily just the big companies that are targets. The supply chain can be a weak link in the chain.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing with M&S and the Co-op, because they haven't published many details, there's a lot of speculation that it might have come through their supply chain. So sometimes or quite often, cyber criminals might be targeting M&S. So the medium-sized companies, our clients, aren't actually targeted, but they are recognised as a supplier to big companies, and therefore they are targeted as a gateway, a doorway into the bigger companies. Like I said, the exact details haven't come out, but there are many cases of small companies being the gateway into larger companies. And just imagine if you're that bigger company, no matter, you're not going to think very favourably of that small company if they are the doorway in. So yes, the supply chain is crucial, and these big companies are becoming more and more demanding of their supply chain to prove that they are secure. As the whole world becomes more digital and interconnected, they're trying to make sure that all those doorways are shut and wherever possible. So it's becoming more challenging for medium-sized businesses. But it's not difficult. It's just it's not something that they've come across before. It's quite basic stuff that they have to do. Quite simple. A lot of it is documentation, procedures, policies. They don't have to spend loads on much.
But it's like anything. It's simple if you know it and you know you have to do it and you stay on top of it. But by the same token, the simple things are always the things that are easy to let slide. When you're busy or you're going through a growth spurt and you're under pressure in other ways, those simple things are the things that can let slide.
No, yeah,
even if you're doing them.
You're too right. I mean, policies and procedures really should be reviewed every year, shouldn't they, as a minimum? A good example, I was just talking to a company earlier today, and one of their policies referred to government legislation, and it stated 1994. Well, it's changed a number of times, and the latest legislation is 2015. But it's changed a number of times since then. And I was just saying, it just shows the last time you reviewed this policy.
Well, you mentioned ISO earlier. I've done a lot of business with ISO. I'm sure you have as well. And their standards, even if you don't adopt them, there are some tenets and principles of their standards which are excellent. Which is, a couple of them spring to mind. One is your documentation needs to be reviewed periodically, and I think they recommend a minimum of every 12 months. So even if it doesn't change, you look at it after a year and you go, yeah, that's still valid. So we'll sign off on the next version and we'll look at it again next year. And the other thing that they always look for, because there are organizations that do audit you against ISO standards. And what they're looking for is not, as you said earlier, there's not certain things that have to be in place. It's, are you continually improving upon what you've got? Are you continually looking at it, closing loopholes in processes, legislation changes, have you updated, etc. So even if you don't adopt the ISO standards, there are things from adopting ISO standards that small and medium companies can do and perhaps should do.
Yeah,
especially when it comes to cybersecurity.
I'm glad you said that, because when you were talking, I was thinking a lot of people get put off by ISO standards thinking that they're quite massive, and they are, and to adopt them. But as you rightly say, the main thing, in my opinion, they're looking for is continual improvement. So you don't have to tick all the boxes to get approved, to get certified. You just have to have a plan to get approved and show. And a certification is every couple of years, or if not longer. I think you get an auditor comes in and you're good for another couple of years.
Well, it is, but and I'm not suggesting that all companies should do it, but when you first get it, you get interim audits every 6 months or every 3 months or something. So for the first period, they're really checking up that you're adopting embracing it and saying, yeah, we are going to improve. We are going to close processes. We are going to review things, etc. And then after that, it sort of tails off a bit.
Yeah, I've never had that frequency of maybe
Yeah.
maybe I've been good at
It's
justifying them in the first meeting.
in large organizations. It's certainly
Maybe large organisations, but yeah, the medium-sized ones I've worked with, I've not seen that. It might well happen, but I've just not been unfortunate to have to go
Well,
through that.
there is a thing. So I was working with an organization recently on a couple of ISO certifications, and the people doing the certifying were quick to point out there's no such thing as an ISO certification. ISO is a set of standards and guidelines on how to do lots of different things, right? And the organizations that come in and certify do exactly what we've said. They come in and make sure you've adopted it. Even if you've adopted a fraction of it, but you're working towards doing more of it, that's absolutely fine. And they certify, in inverted commas, that you're doing that. You don't get an ISO certification from ISO that says, right, you are doing 27001, which is the information security one. You just get an independent company saying you're doing lots of things that should be improving if you continue to do them. Your management of information security.
Yeah, I mean, in the UK, that's UCAS, isn't it? UK Accreditation Society.
There's lots of independent companies that can do it as well.
And I think along that point, to get your certification, it doesn't have to be the whole company. You can just very clearly define it's just this part of the company.
Yeah.
We're just going to.
And people often do like a corner of it and then say, right, we're certified.
Which is fine. It's all playing the game, isn't it?
But it's back to really, I've advised companies before saying that, don't do ISO 27001, but get someone to look at it and adopt the bits of it that are relevant to you and do those things, because they will stand you in good stead. You don't need to spend a lot of money getting certified against it or doing the whole thing, but it's a risk decision saying, actually, let's look at this guide template. Let's take from it what's relevant and good for us, and let's adopt and do that. So you can sort of align to a standard without actually fully adopting.
Yeah, I think most people go for the adoption or for the certification when we're talking about supply chain, when they're big customers.
Yes, demand it.
Demand. Yeah. Where's your ISO 27000? Where's your Cyber Essentials certificate, etc.? That's when most people go as far as certification, but they can do it without. They can, as you say, they can take a lot of that and actually adopt it, so they're less prone to be attacked.
Yes, it's an external facing thing. So quality is another one where people generally do it to say their product is, ISO 9001 qualified, certified. I know what the right, but it's an outward facing thing, where really the value of it is an internal facing thing. Did you actually adopt the ethos of what the standard says, rather than are you dotting the I? So there are good things in there, is the point.
Yes.
Without having to fully adopt them. And the principles of it are generally quite good.
But just to finish that discussion off, I think we're talking about M&S, co-op, what's going to be the fallout. Fully expect the fallout to be for them to look at their supply chain and insist on, they'll probably go through a period of reviewing their supply chain and ensuring their supply chain is as secure as possible through whatever certification, audits, whatever. So our customers, our medium-sized businesses, will be impacted in that way, probably for a good thing. So if they're asked that, it can only help everyone if they're more secure. But it'll be seen as a pain at the time to have to go through it.
Have you seen yet? I'm not sure I have. I've seen the situation you're referring to where a larger company or a government body says, right, I want you to be ISO 27001, and if you not do it, you can't do business with us. You can't submit a proposal, for example. What I haven't seen, but I have heard twitterings about, is like M&S themselves going to the supply chain saying, we're going to come in and have a right of audit against you. So we can come in unannounced and actually check that you're doing these things.
Yeah, I don't think they do come in unannounced, but we do have clients that, when they're tendering for business, have to prove certain certifications and certain accreditations.
Yeah, I'm thinking beyond that though. Once you've sort of crossed the boundary and you're now a supplier to M&S, have you come across a situation where those larger companies are actually coming in? I think quite a lot of them in contracts have rights to do various things. Never seen it actually happen though.
No, I don't think it has actually happened, but that maybe it's a time thing, isn't it? Can they be, if it's becoming a higher priority, if they get hacked more
I can
frequently?
see it happening. I can simply see it starting to happen.
And contracts only last so many years anyway, don't they? So probably at contract renewal date, they review.
They can always be added to. You'd imagine M&S, after having a site, if it is in the supply chain, will be writing out to all their supply chain saying, right, as of immediately, we'll give you 3 months, 6 months, whatever, to get to this level. Otherwise, I'm sorry, you can't supply M&S anymore.
Yeah, or prove that that there'll be some fallout for medium-sized businesses, that's for sure. We just don't know what it is at the moment, but that would be an obvious one, won't it?
Yeah.